It's a big world out there. Welcome to Bigfoot's Wilderness Podcast.
And we're back for Bigfoot's Wilderness Podcast number 3. I hope that everyone's doing their best to stay safe. Let's try our best to watch out for our friends and family. Maybe say a prayer to help guide us and protect us too. But you didn't come here to talk about that, even though Bigfoot is the world champion of social distancing. Tonight we'll continue where we left off with Anthony on his experiences and research around Virginia. So this is part 2. Now listen closely, folks, because at the end, Anthony will share something that not many researchers will do. But before we get into that discussion, I want to share a quick story that was left as a comment a few months back. I thought it was fascinating and wanted to share it with you. What I have learned in my life, and I'm 55 years old, is that the old folks don't talk about these things. Ridicule is a powerful thing. It's a way of keeping people quiet about certain subjects. I had my encounter here in Louisiana, and I was 8 years old. I couldn't tell my father because he was in the Navy in World War II and not into what he'd surely believe was nonsense. He wasn't the type either to believe in things that he's never seen, or maybe he's just never wanted to talk about it. My dad and I were duck hunting early one morning, and while he was paddling around putting out the decoys, I was in the blind getting my .410 shotgun ready. So while he was busy, I noticed what looked like a giant black and red hairball laying down in the prairie grass. The sun was just coming up and the sky had a reddish color, and as I was watching my dad out of the corner of my eyes, I noticed what looked like 2 red dots in the hair. So my dad had just set the last decoy, and he started paddling back to the blind, and as he turned his back towards the blind, this big hairball stood up on 2 legs, and that's when I realized that the 2 red dots were eyes. This thing stood up, and right off the bat, I knew that I was not looking at a bear, and just guessing, this thing had to be close to the 8-foot mark, and it was built like the biggest linebacker that I've ever seen before. It had no neck, and giant shoulders and chest, but it was actually kind of slim from the chest down, and the arms were extremely long. It turned and walked towards the cypress trees and bushes. My dad never turned around to see the creature, and I was scared that he would think that I was making things up, so I didn't tell him. After a couple of weeks of steady nightmares, my mom one night asked me why I was having bad nightmares all of a sudden. I told her what happened, and she came out and told me about an experience that happened to my grandfather, who had also seen the creature many years before me. My grandfather used to trap for food and side money, and he had a run-in with the creature. So a couple of years later, my mother took me to the drive-in theater and we saw The Legend of Boggy Creek. That movie changed everything for me. I now understood exactly what I saw. Later on, I wouldn't go hunting for a couple of years, and out of nowhere, my dad came to me and said, "Hey, your uncle needs someone to go deer hunting with." And before I could say no, he pulled out his .44 Magnum out of its case and said, "Take this with you from now on when you go hunting, and that way, if any of those wild hogs come after you, you have something that will definitely stop them." He walked away, and I never said anything to my mother about what he did. I wondered if she told him about what happened to me. The nightmares lasted many years, and once in a while, I still get one, and through the years, I've done my own little investigations, because once you know that they exist, it's like you just can't let them go, and you have to know more about them. Peace out. Thank you, William, for your encounter story. I appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into part 2 of Anthony's encounter stories and research in Virginia. All right, folks, so we're going to go ahead and complete our second part with Anthony. So, Anthony, how are you doing?
Still getting better, and I hope you're doing well.
Yep, we're hanging in there. I'm glad to hear you're doing better.
Thank you.
Why don't we skip over to the part that I like best, which would be your experience at Midoc Mountain. Of course, that's another park I've been to, and I find it very creepy. But yeah, I'd love to hear your experience.
All right, so this would have been in 2018. I think it'd be around either I want to say either September or October. I'd have to pull out my receipt to tell you exactly when. But I went out there with my Bigfoot mentor, and we went out there. First night we went out, and we got there pretty late, and not pretty late, but I mean it was after sundown, and so but we still set up our tents, and we were kind of trying to figure out if we should go out and set up like we usually do, because when I go out with him, what he brings with him is a parabolic microphone, okay, and number one, it's for two reasons. Number one is he has a problem with his hearing, okay, and the other reason is it's obviously just to hear animals that are walking close to us, and sometimes that's how we know, like if the creatures don't make a sound, that's how we know they're in the area, because we'll hear them, bipedal footprints, in the woods. So the first night we didn't set up. We just, started a fire. We just, we were both exhausted, from the from our day, because we didn't. It's not like we got up early and got there early and set up early. I got off work. We met. Went out to eat. Then we went over there. It was after sundown. We even got a little lost because that was our first time there. And finally, we just set up, and we just, took two chairs out, sat, and, we tried to engage the one that was, I forgot that person's title that was running the camp, but like for late arrivals like us, they would take our money and, with whatever spot that we're assigned in, and then there's a little tag there that you mark as yours, like mark it as taken so that nobody else thinks that it's available.
Right, kind of like a lot number.
Yeah, but there was something underneath the lot number. There was some type. I don't know. I don't remember what it was, but well, we just set up our chairs, and right across from our lot. So if you've been to that Midoc Mountain, you know that it's kind of like a circle that drives around. So we were a few spots away from where the bathrooms were, and right across from where we had set up our tent was beginning of one of the trails, and that first night that we were there, when we set up our chairs, we were hearing some howls, and they were getting a little closer, and as they were getting close to where we weren't hearing the howls, but what we were seeing was eye shine, okay, and we thought that was cool. We saw, pair of eyes. Couldn't exactly gauge the height of eyes, but definitely, above 6-7 feet. But to me, it certainly wasn't as big as what it was in back by where I used to live. So we stood out there, and the eye shine. It was just like we were being watched. It was just like we were being watched, but not for long, which and I guess that was kind of cool because it felt like we weren't going to get bothered with. And so we stayed up late. We, probably about an hour had passed, and we didn't hear much, but we were so tired. And so that first night we went to bed about 1 o'clock. My friend, he got up much earlier than I did. And, because he is used to it, his working hours are the overnight shift. So he'll go in around 6 p.m. and he'll get home from work around 6 a.m. So he got up much earlier than I did, and he went down that trail without me. And I know they have different names for that trail, but if you look at the map, it's the one, it's a trail really close to the bathrooms there. And so he had walked down that trail whole time while I was sleeping, and then he had come back already. By the time he had come back, I was starting to wake up, and he was already in conversation with the person that was in charge of the running, the host. That's what it was. He was talking with the host and trying to find out from the host if they were hearing any strange sounds. And the host said just about every night there's something weird that takes place over there. And the host was telling Dave, that there's just some people that are so freaked out by what they're hearing, and some people by what they saw, that they just leave the campsite and they'll come back the next day and get their stuff. They'll go to a motel room and then they'll come back and then they'll just pack up and leave. So, but after he's done talking with the host, he's telling me, he's saying, "Hey, you won't believe this." He says, "I wish you could go on that trail, because I've had surgery on both knees." And so he told me he purposely got up early to pick the most difficult trail to go on by himself because, he didn't want me to have any difficulty because of my knees. And so he said that while he was on one of the trails, he was at one spot where he had to step up pretty steep. And he said by the time he got there, he said he had seen something big and hairy step down and out of the way and just kind of like hide into the trees, and he said it happened very quickly. If he said he wasn't looking in the direction where, not like where he was walking, but he had his head turned and he was kind of walking. He said if he didn't have his head turned, he would have missed it, But it was just a very quick sighting. Something just stepped out of the way and then just went to hiding, and he couldn't see. He tried to walk into the direction where it had dropped out of sight. He said it was already gone, So in addition to just hiding very quickly, it must have moved quick and quietly because he couldn't find it. So he went back on the trail, then came back and he met up with me. So we made ourselves some breakfast, and we said, we figured while we're here, let's go check out the trails. So we walked around. We walked around 2 trails, and I remember we made a mistake by not bringing water because one of those trails was about, I want to say it's about 2 miles long, and that was one of the 2 that we had walked on. But by that time we were done, I was tired. I was very tired. So, but while we had walked on the trail, and this is one of those trails that kind of loops around, and then at least the direction that we had taken it, when we were heading back towards the campsite, that little river there was on our left, and I don't know if you had walked on that same trail or not, but I'm just giving you an idea of the trail that we were on. And if I had a map in front of me, I could describe it to you, just describe the exact trail that we are. But while we were on that trail, let me just back up a little bit. Anytime that he and I go out to, hiking or go out in the woods or anything like that, we already are, he looks one way, I look the other way. That's the way we walk. We always try to be mindful not to keep our eyes in the same direction because we might miss something. And that day on that trail, he had 2 creatures cross in front of him. My luck, I was the one in the back. He walked in front and I was behind him. It happened twice on the same trail where the creature was just walked. I mean, well, not walked. It kind of like ran right in front of him. He saw it, kind of big, hairy, kind of like reddish brown hair. He was describing, and describing how the hair moved when it crossed his path and stuff like that. I mean, and kind of like just like anybody else, it was kind of like with quick reflexes, like there it goes. And by the time you turn your head, it's gone. I mean, he just has incredible speed. And not only were they gone, but where we were on the trail, it just, there was just like tall grass there, and the way it moved, it looked like the grass was just moving with the wind. It didn't look like anything had just went through there, but I believe my friend. He said he saw it, and twice on that trail, something had just crossed our path and gone. I mean, you didn't hear it coming, you didn't hear it going. It just crossed his path. If he was looking in another direction, we both would have missed it. But at least he got to see it. So the two times we were walking together, he got, they crossed in front of him twice, and then the one time that he had walked by himself, he had seen one duck down and out of sight. So, are you familiar with the picnic area that they have over there?
Yeah, in the big open area.
Yes.
Yep.
That's where Steve Barcelo, I think, does his Bigfoot in the Park there.
Yeah.
So right behind the bathrooms in the picnic area, there's, an entrance to a trail there. I had set up. I only brought one game camera. I've given up on trying to catch things on game camera, but I'm always, feeling like, what the heck, let's give it a try. So I brought one game camera and I put it on the trail and I kind of hid it. There was an old stump that was there and I kind of hid it and put some debris around it, just so it would not be obvious, to something in their living room being out of place. And we set up the parabolic mic. Both of us had sat down. And we've been doing this together for a few years now. So if he's with the parabolic mic with the headphones on, sometimes I'll have my headphones on with him, or sometimes I'll have it off, because when you're listening to anything on a parabolic with a parabolic mic, you lose a sense of direction when you hear a noise coming from the dish. The thing picks up sounds from such great distances that with the headphones on, you really can't tell if it's from your left, your right, front, back. You could just tell that you're picking up something in the distance. And so when we start to hear something, he'll keep his headphones on because of his hearing problems. I'll take my headphones off, and then I will signal with my hands, hey, it's coming from over there. It's coming from over there, While we were sitting there that second night, they seemed to be coming out early. We would hear calls coming from behind us, and then we would hear responses coming from the trail. We would hear, and this was going on back and forth for a while, and they were slowly getting closer. And in the distance, I could see on the ground a pair of eyes just kind of looked at me and then just went away. Now, because they were low, I thought, okay, maybe it was an animal. But then I started noticing there were calls coming from behind us, and the calls from the trail were not responding. There were calls coming from behind us, still no response. And then there was eyes, but now the eyes are about 8 feet, 9 feet in the air. Okay. And then I'm looking at the eyes. My friend Dave is looking in the opposite direction. So if you could imagine, the picnic area, if you can imagine where the bathrooms were, if you were looking at the bathrooms, we have our parabolic dish pointed towards the left. Okay. And that's where the pair of eyes were coming from the left in the trail. And by the time it got to the opening of the trail, this is part of where my, I don't want to say the area that I was responsible for, but just the area that I was looking in, the area where he was looking, kind of like my right eye met his left eye type of thing. And both of us at the same time seeing the pair of eyes. And then I point and he's like, there it is. And I'm like, yep, I see it. You can see the pair of eyes, like I said, about 8 feet in the air. You can see it for a second. It looked like he was getting closer, just a huge dark figure just getting closer. And then it would just, the eyes went away, like it closed its eyes or turned its head. And then the figure was gone. And that was it. Okay. I was getting kind of excited because I thought, I got something on the game camera. It had crossed the path of where I had the game camera. But later on, when I went to check, it didn't trigger the game camera at all. And I know what.
So
Go ahead.
Let me get this straight. So you're kind of doing that cop car thing, right? So you're almost like you have two cop cars that pull up opposite each other so they can both talk to each other through their driver's side windows. So you have your chairs kind of set opposite. So he's looking one direction, you're looking another. Is that right?
That's right. And in between us is the parabolic dish. Okay. And so, and the interesting thing with the parabolic dish is that both of us have, headphones. I don't recall if it had like two headphone outputs or if he had like a splitter, but it was still connected so that both of us can hear what was going on.
Wow, that's interesting. So I mean, when you say the eyes are gone, and obviously you're probably saying it turned its head, it turned around and walked away, or I mean, the only assumption I could make is if the eyes are gone, it's because it retreated or it walked past you or.
Well, I would say it retreated because if it would have stepped out of the trail, then it would have been exposed, to some of those distant dusk to dawn lights that were on, and so, so how these creatures are there, they just don't, they're hiding all the time. So yeah, it was again. Something that he and I have seen many times, but his experiences are a lot more, I don't want to say entertaining because sometimes they're frightening. I mean, that same parabolic dish that he had set up, he had one time, he had creatures run past him so close that they had knocked the dish over, so, but I wasn't with him when he experienced that. So. But
this is probably too early in the conversation, but do you believe that these Bigfoot are natural?
I believe they're natural. I do believe they're flesh and blood creatures. I don't, I mean, unless I see otherwise, I mean, I don't think that they're anything else but, footprints that I have casted, and I have some more pictures that I'd like to share with you, especially the first cast that I had made. I'd like to send you those pictures as well. They have 5 toes. They I mean, five toes. A heel too. I mean. My first cast, when I had made it, it was in the creek by the edge of the property where I used to live. And so I made a mistake of pulling it out early, and it had cracked in half. But the fortunate thing for that, fortunately for me, when that happened, I noticed that where it had cracked, there was a very thick hair sticking out of it. And mind you, this was my first cast, so I'm over here trying to pull it out, thinking I messed it up, and then I realized I can't pull this thing out. It didn't break or anything, And then, unfortunately, when I was talking to my friend, he said, you shouldn't have touched it. Your hands were on it. You probably, now it's got human contamination. You mixed your DNA with the hair on that hair sample. But regardless of that, I mean, I still got a footprint, a cast of a footprint with a hair sticking out of it. And I'll show you a picture of that.
Yeah, the only footprint I have is hanging on the wall that my wife bought for me about 10 years ago, and it is from a cast. I want to say, from California, from Northern California, and it is massive. I mean, it's 16, 17 inches, 5, 6, 7 inches wide. Got the it's got the actual uh, massive big toe, and it's so cool to look at. I the only place big enough to hang it is on a wall. Or the best spot to hang it is on a wall. But I guess one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, and sometimes I just have to ask you now because I'll probably forget. Um, have you had a close-up encounter where you could actually see um, facial features?
Uh, yes. There was, and I would say, also answering your question earlier, if I feel like these are, uh, you know, my opinion, being flesh and blood creatures. If anyone has seen a face, I think probably the thing that's very confusing and very, well, let me just say, I guess they're not like dogs, they're not like birds, that always look the same. It's like they they got expressions like you and I do, raising their eyebrows, because uh, I you know, I don't know what to say except that when they make those expressions, the expressions are human-like, you know. But let me just explain. There was one time when the creatures had jumped out of the tree line of my property. They jumped back in. They jumped out of the tree line. They jumped back in. And then it got down on all fours. And it just gives a quick look, and then it's kind of like it didn't raise both eyebrows, it just raised one, you know? So I guess it would be, as I looked at it, it would be its left eyebrow, kind of like, and then takes off across on all fours across the soybean field. Now the soybean, probably about, I don't know, 3 feet high, maybe a little taller at the time. I'm guessing as to the height, but the thing is, my point is this: is that even down on all fours, its belly was above the soybean as it was growing, and I'm 5'8", and there's no way I could have had my belly that high and had my back that flat and travel that fast across the stinking field to get to the other side of that tree line, So, um, yeah, there's been other times that I've had some. Unfortunately, I don't have access to it right now, but there was one time that I went back to the Lake Cheston area and was taking pictures of structures, and then when I got back home to look at the pictures, it looked like that I was taking pictures of face, and I was like, is this, I just couldn't believe, what I was seeing, and I had to have a friend of mine take a look at it. I'm like, just tell me what you see. And he was seeing what I was seeing, but the interesting thing was I didn't tell him what I saw in the picture. I just said, tell me what you see in this picture. And he was able to point it out right away. So another day or two later, I went back to that same spot, and I realized I was literally, within a foot, no more than a foot and a half away from where the creatures were, and what I thought was a shadow in this little structure. It's not a shadow anymore because now I could see right through it. I thought it, and now I know for sure that, hey, I took a picture of one of the creatures right by the structure, and it didn't run away, So it just stood still. I don't know if it was, I don't know if it knew that I didn't realize it was there or not, but probably would have freaked me out. but it just stood still, and I was just there. I was just there taking pictures of the structures that I was seeing. Yeah. So
It was social distancing itself from you. That's the new term these days.
yeah, we need to do that with some folks in Congress. I will tell you that.
Oh my goodness. If you, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you weren't finished with your Midoc experience, you can continue. But if you are done, you shared with me the soybean field experience, and if you want to, either one, jump to either one would be fine.
Well, I will say that I brought just to end our night at Midoc because we were only there 2 nights. After that experience there, it got very quiet, and so we just packed up and went back to the camp. What I did was set out a recorder because that, if there's been plenty of times where if I didn't have time to stay up all night, I'll just set out a recorder and then I'll just go back home and then, try to listen to whatever was out there. Now, the type of recorder I had a lock button on it. So like if I hit record and then slide the switch to lock, that means I could press any button. It'll still record. It won't, it won't respond to any of the buttons that I'm pressing. And it also has a very faint LED to let you know that it's in record mode. So that's exactly what I did. Set it in record, put it in lock, saw that the light was on, so I knew I was recording, and I set it out to record the creatures. So several times we were trying to sleep, and to me, it sounded like they were just like right outside the tent. I mean, the screams were so loud. I thought at any moment now they were just going to take the tent and drag both of us, But it was just so loud. And I'm saying to myself, you know what? I thank God I got that recorder out there because I'm recording all this. And in the morning, when I woke up, here's the weird part. The recorder was there. It was still in the lock position, but it was no longer recording. And I couldn't explain that. I was kind of upset about that too.
That would suck.
Yeah, it would suck. But I know that somebody listening has probably experienced something like that as well, because I've run into a lot of people that say that similar things have happened to them. But that was my second night at Midoc. I thought I was going to have some audio for you, but or anybody else, but it just didn't happen. I was very upset about that because it was kind of unique howls. Some of it sounded like things I've heard before, but there was other chatter that took place that I just thought I was recording and was excited, but it just didn't happen.
Well, I didn't ever see anything at Midoc. I did find prints, but I was standing by I want to call it a stream. It's probably 30 feet wide. I was standing by it and I was taking a picture just of a scenery, and I was startled by a man dressed in a black, like a sweatsuit with a black hat on. He came over this rise. And that felt like it was a Bigfoot sighting. That was pretty scary. Just he came running over the hill. He was just doing his normal run. And I tell you what, when you think you see something and you're kind of weirded out by it, and anything around you disrupts you, it makes you jump.
Oh yeah.
So I can imagine you hearing all these noises and trying to record everything and trying to sleep at the same time. I can't imagine that would be very easy.
Yeah, and I could understand why people that go to that campsite just pack up and leave if you're not used to it, and if you've only heard it, for the first time. It's a pretty scary sound. It literally will make the hair stand up where you didn't think you had hair before.
My little sighting that happened, I was standing behind the cabin that we were in, and when I heard the noises, when it was making these, all I can say is it was an ape noise, and it was going hoo hoo like that. It was running through my body. I could feel all of it, and I was I didn't move. I didn't move forward. I didn't move back. I stared there was a mountainside. So I'm looking at a mountain and trying to figure out where it was. And it felt so close to me, I couldn't tell. And those are the kinds of situations where you think you hear it, you hear it, or you think you hear it, and then you doubt yourself. You know you hear it, but then you think you hear it because you can't pinpoint it. It's like staring at something that's right in front of you, but not being able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
That was very frustrating. But yeah, you've been out there quite a bit for a many number of years, so you've definitely experienced more than I have, and I'm not sure I want to experience a whole lot, but mine was just by pure dumb luck. Just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
I'm glad you were.
Yeah, and my wife rented the cabin, and I never even knew where it was. I had no clue where we were going. I knew it was somewhere north of Charlottesville, and I was assuming it was going to be off 29, somewhere close to Charlottesville. I had no idea it was going to be as rural as it was in another town, 20 some miles from Charlottesville. So it was almost like it couldn't have been a setup, right? I didn't even know we were going there, but it was the first thing that crossed my mind. I'm like, oh, someone's playing a joke on me. That was my practical sense. That's what I thought. But in your case, you're looking for them. You know what you're looking for, or you're inhabiting their area. You're living in their space. You're traveling in their area. And I got to imagine that's pretty humbling.
Well, over the years, there's some things you get used to, but there are some times where when you feel like they're that close, it's intimidating. Don't say that.
Yep. I can imagine. Well, if you want to share the soybean field experience, that would be cool.
Well, there was another occasion. I think this is probably something that you and I had talked about before. About there was one time when I was coming home. I remember seeing a few pair of eyes, and out across on the other end of the soybean field where the tree line was. And so, first thing is I'd like to stare at those eyes because you just don't know what it could be. I mean, there's raccoon in the area, there's deer, and so. But the interesting thing was that there was about 2 or 3 pair of eyes that were behind the trees, and as I was shining my light, I had a very bright 3600 lumen Duracell flashlight, LED flashlight, and it has a very, I mean, it will, when you focus the beam, it really brightens up whatever's on the other side, and so. But I couldn't see what was on the other side because they were in the tree line. They weren't outside of it. They weren't like out right at the beginning of the soybean field. And an interesting thing about these eyes, they weren't going up and down like deer, eating anything. And so some of them, the eyes would just blink. But the unique thing was that the eyes went behind the tree, and then you would see just one eye peek. As long as I kept my flashlight steady, I could see what's going on. You would see, and then it would look like they close their eyes, and then they would open it, and then they would like go behind the tree, and then they would like either poke. One pair of eyes might poke out the same side of the tree, or might poke another pair of eyes might poke out on the other side of the tree, and I just thought that was interesting. So I'm saying to myself, all right, I don't think this is deer, okay. Their heads go up and down, but these things are, just kind of like, you could tell these eyes are trying to hide either from me or from the light. They did probably annoyed with the bright light, but there was another pair of eyes that had come up out of the soybean field, and then it went back down, and then it looked like it got closer because it came up again. When it came up again, to me, these eyes were getting closer. These guys were getting closer. And I was getting worried. So, I quickly went back to the house, got my shotgun, went out, and I'm like, because there's more than one, and I didn't know if I was being, I just didn't know how to interpret this pair of eyes getting closer. Okay. And as much as and every time I would see the pair, I would be pointing the flashlight in the distance past the pair of eyes that were coming up and down from the soybean field. So by the time I would put my flashlight down to try to see if I could see the head, it would be gone, because it went down so fast. So I couldn't see the head, but I could still see the eye shine, even though the light was pointed in a different direction. But it was getting closer. And first I was going to load up with some, with some slugs. I'm getting kind of confused as to what I did first. I can't remember if I loaded with slugs or with birdshot, but no, that's what it was. I did load up with slugs first, and I didn't want to waste my slugs, and so I switched to birdshot number 8s. And when I put them in, I didn't shoot directly at them. I just shot in the air. Now, if that was deer, loud sound like that, they're going to take off running. All of those eyes did not move. They just stayed in place looking at me. Okay. And the pair of eyes that was popping up and getting closer, it just popped its head up and just didn't get closer anymore. That was the only impact that I had on it, but none of those eyes moved. None of them, came closer. They didn't totally go away. They just kind of like ducking. And then it was like, to me, I just thought it was going to be a losing staring contest. And so I figured, let me just go inside. Wow. This is really, their living room is over there. My living room is in that building. So I'm like, let me go back to my living room.
Yeah. Smart move on your part. What do you think the distance was?
Oh, the distance there. I'm going to say, I'm going to say it was probably about, because I'm kind of gauging it from when we were, years ago. I'm going to say it was probably about 225, 250 yards.
Oh, that's plenty. That's a good distance.
Yeah.
Well, I would be afraid of, and this is where you lived, right?
Where I used to live.
Where you used to live. So we tend to give, what is it called? Anthropomorphizing, where you give animals traits of humans. And obviously we think, we assume that Bigfoot are possibly some sort of a hybrid, some sort of a primate. We don't know. But I would think that if you shot a gun, they might come over and, check out your house.
Well, it's funny you say that. There was one occasion where it was about 1 or 2 in the morning, and it was a weekend. And, kind of like a lot of other families, everybody stays up late on the weekends, and I let my kids stay up late. But it was one of those nights where everybody was up, and I went to bed, but what had woke me up was that there was a loud bang on the wall, and I said, so I got up out of my bed and I'm like, well, who's banging? And everybody's like, nobody's banging. I'm like, nobody banged on the wall over here? I said, no. And I'm like, all right, well, let me go outside. And I got my same flashlight out, and then now this is at least 4 acres, about 3-4 acres in the opposite direction where those eyes were popping up and down. And I got my flashlight out, and I just seen a pair of eyes that was very close to the tree line. I couldn't make out a face, but what I could make out was that something was on all fours, and it was just walking, kind of like walking back and forth on all fours. And it was, and every once in a while it would just stop, and it would just look at me, and then it would walk a little bit, but then I was, and sometimes as it was walking, it would look at me, and sometimes it wouldn't. But a lot of times as it was going back and forth, it was always stopping behind a tree. It was always stopping behind a tree, and then it would walk again, and then kind of look. And that was a little, for me, that was like a little too close. So I don't know if they had come up to the house and hit it with their hand, or if they threw something or what, but my theory is whatever it was that got our attention, it was, it was right there walking back and forth. And interesting thing is that my soon-to-be ex-wife, she was not a firm believer, but I asked her, I said, look, at least come out here and take a look at this, and she saw exactly what I saw. But unfortunately, because it was in pitch black dark and you could see eye shines, you could make something walking out there, but you can't make out a face. So, again, when you gotta, even even when you see something, all she would agree to was that it was something, not knowing what it was. Right away, she might have thought it was a bear, if it was a deer, and I'm like, well, I said, I don't think a bear would stick around that long. Most of the times when they're seen, they kind of like to run away from people. So
I can confirm the same story, that when I did have my visual, that my wife saw it too. I saw one thing. She said, looks like something. And I think I've said this numerous times. She said to me, if you think it's a Bigfoot, why don't you go out there and go check it out? Like, I could feel the love, the real love there. Like, I've got nothing. I have no gun. I have a tiny little knife. What am I supposed to do?
By the way, honey, where's that insurance policy?
Right. I don't think I'm worth that much. But yeah, it was that the very fact that you could see something either coming towards you or walking away after slapping your house, possibly slapping your house, probably slapping your house, tells me that he knows where you live.
Yeah. That only happened once, thankfully. I know I've heard of other people saying it happened quite frequently, but to me, that only happened once.
Do you think that a person who's never seen a Bigfoot, I hear this story all the time, that people say that their brain doesn't realize what they're seeing, so they misidentify it. They call it a bear. They say, I don't know what it was. It wasn't a bear, but it wasn't a man. But they continue that frame of reference of, I don't know what it was I saw, but then I suddenly realized it wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. It was something else. It was a Bigfoot, or it was what people call a Bigfoot. Do you believe that the brain just doesn't see that? People say that, that's something that is common, actually.
Well, yeah, you're right. I agree with you. It is something that's common. If you, well, it's kind of difficult to describe, because if you remember my first sighting, I thought it was a deer. It was, to me, I saw two pair of legs, and I automatically assumed that it was a deer. And the first thing I was thinking of was, why is this deer not running? My vehicle's approaching, and why isn't it running? And then as I passed, as I'm slowly driving in my work truck, then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's not a deer. Now that, some whatever was blocking my view, not blocking it completely, but the brush and all that. Now I can clearly see, after passing a few trees, and now I can clearly see that, oh, this is two individual little, I'm going to call them juveniles, standing, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and then first, the one, as I looked, the one towards my right jumped up first, and then on top of a log, and then jumped out of sight, and then the other one quickly followed, and as quick as that was, I mean, it was exciting to see, but as I, replayed in my head, I can tell you what it wasn't. It wasn't a kangaroo. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a deer, and when you start ruling those things of what it is not, then your mind's more open to say, okay, then must be what I saw. especially, when you look at the type of hair. I mean, when I saw the one that was very, very, very black, I mean, it's so black. You can't even, it's like blacker than the black cat, blacker than the black dog. You know what I mean? It's, those are some unique things about it. There's one, I don't know if you've seen it before, but there was a picture out there of a creature that from the head up, it looks exactly like a man. It looks like it has bald head, hair on the sides, but the rest of its body is pure black and hairy. And when you see something that looks like a man, I mean, that certainly is going to, first thing you're going to think of is it looks like a man in a suit. But how is he able to run in the pitch black darkness? How is he able to get by, running without bumping into a tree? You and I can't do that. So,
like you said, it's their living room. It's their home.
That's right.
I posted a picture. Of course, this is going to come out in another 2 weeks, but let's say today's March 16th. Mm-hmm. If those of you that are listening, if you go back to March 15th and look at my Twitter, Bigfoot's Wilderness, you will see a picture that I shared from Thomas Seward from Sasquatch Island. Is his Facebook page. You can go there as well. He posted a picture of a Bigfoot. He swears up and down it's real. It was apparently taken by a logger on Vancouver Island. And the weirdest thing about the picture is it is absolutely clear. Uh-oh. It's perfectly clear. And you basically see the Bigfoot, you see part of the body, and you see from the nose up. And it is amazing to look at. A lot of people say, oh, that's a still frame from a movie, or something doesn't smell right. You know what's really hard to believe is that it may be real. And even with a perfectly clear picture, people still don't believe. So again, it could be fake, but it could be real. It's a 50-50 shot. We're getting testimony from some guy who said he took the picture, and I'm sure there are people out there who are trying to reference everything on International Movie Database to see if they can find that screenshot, but it doesn't appear to be a screenshot. It looks like the real deal, and the guy who took the picture focused.
Okay. Well, I would say this. I mean, for that person, and for the naysayers, if he is willing to bring them back, bring anyone to where he had taken the picture, I mean, that would add to some credibility of him taking the picture of an actual creature.
So what do you I'm sorry, go ahead.
With the areas where I've had the experiences, and if somebody were to tell me, hey, I don't believe what you saw, or you're just hoaxing. I mean, I'm not. I don't go out to try to trick people. Okay, if anyone is in doubt of what I am seeing, what I've seen, what I've recorded, I would say make a commitment, okay? Meet with me, okay? And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels this way, but I'm just saying, if you are in doubt as to anything, as to what I've experienced, I will sacrifice my time. And if I was financially able to, I would even pay for anybody to meet me. And I would set you up, but for now I can't do that. But I still am available as long as someone is committed to meet with me and to spend time. If you don't see something, you'll probably hear something. If you won't hear something, you will probably see something. But make the commitment to be patient, and I can almost guarantee you will experience what I've experienced in the same exact locations that I've been to. And I bet whoever took that picture probably would feel the same way. for those that don't believe him.
All right.
You
Now,
don't.
are you going to make me the mediator? How if anybody would want to get in touch with you and would want to make that commitment and do some research with you, how would they do it?
Okay, anyone who is genuinely interested, we can start with you being the mediator. And, just so that, again, you can somehow, and I guess, let's one by one, let's see who's real and who's fake. And we'll definitely try to try as we can. Not that we're professionals. I'm just saying, if you're serious, I'm serious. And
So this might work. Let's try this. If you're interested in meeting up with Anthony at some point, the easiest way to do this would not be to leave a comment, because I'm sure you don't want your public information displayed. So here's what you do. Email me at bigfootswilderness@gmail.com. It's bigfootswilderness@gmail.com. So obviously no apostrophe S on that. And we'll take your information. I'll share it with Anthony, and then he'll be in contact with you. That's probably the easiest way to do it. How do you think that might work?
yeah, that's a start. I'm open for that. Let's go. Let's do it.
Because I'll tell you what, you never told me about the fact that you did some research with William Dranginis. I mean, you told me recently in the last couple of days, but when I initially met you, I didn't know that. And I know that guy was a very stand-up gentleman, good guy, had a passion for what he did. And I've read his stories back in the night, or read his article back in the 90s. I think it was 95, 96, something like that, when I first saw his first article. So I definitely think that you learned from a guy who knew what he was doing.
Oh yeah. But well, let me just clarify. We Bill and I did not go out together. What we did have in common was the areas that he was in. I happened to be literally either across the street or on the other side, experiencing, having my own experiences with the creatures. So, but he and I never went out together. We were trying to make that happen. Unfortunately, his health was degrading, and sadly we lost him. So, but we've there are two areas that I've had a lot of experiences, and he has had them in like I said, just on the other side, and it was pretty comical that we were both doing the research pretty much almost at the same time and not knowing the other was there. And
did you by any chance know where he was metal detecting when he was enjoying his hobby? Do you know where in and around the Culpeper, Virginia area he was?
I do know that it was in not exactly in the Culpeper area. I think this was more in Spotsylvania County.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, and that area. Well, I will say that area, it was Richardsville, and exactly in Richardsville, I'll tell you what. If anybody is serious, you get in contact with you, and I'll tell you exactly where it is, because that's going to be one of the places. If it's close to a naysayer, that's where I'd like to bring them. That's why I like to bring them, because I would like to share that the first time that I was at that area, my friend and I, my mentor and I, he was the one that had brought me to that area. And so we were at it wasn't a clearing, but it was an access road, because there was a forest there. There's a pipeline that goes to the area, so there's going to be no building or anything like that on it. But still, this road here, he happened to be making some calls in one direction. Okay. Again, he's always looking one way. I'm looking another way. The direction I was looking in was looking kind of like looking towards down this road. This road has a pretty steep grade. Okay. What I thought I was looking at, I thought, because it happened so smoothly, I thought it was a white cat that had just crossed the path. It was on all fours. It had just crossed the path, didn't make a sound. And I said, oh, that was interesting. And then my friend has the thought, and he says, hey, I'm going to walk down this path right here. And you stay here, and I'm going to walk down that path. And then as he started walking down that path, then I shouted to him, stop. And then I just realized that that cat that I thought that I saw that had crossed that path, my friend was half the size. Okay. So, and he's about 5'6". And then that's when I realized, I said, get down on all fours. And he got down on all fours. And I said, oh, for sure, one had just crossed his path. And I did not realize that that's what it was.
And it was all white.
And it was all white or gray, So it wasn't like we had a bright light out there to tell you exactly what color it is. But it was definitely light colored. It wasn't dark at all. It wasn't dark at all.
Well, everybody, we're coming up on a good amount of time, and Anthony's got other things to do, but I appreciate your time, Anthony. And you guys out there, if you're serious about wanting to know more, we are in Virginia. Anthony's in Virginia. And I know that people can be listening from all over the world. So I'm pretty sure we're not going to see people flying in. But if you're local and you're listening and you're interested, get in touch with me through bigfootswilderness@gmail.com. And I'll forward to Anthony, and hopefully you guys can connect. And, we're coming up on some mild weather here in Virginia. This week's going to be in the 60s, 70s, and I think it's just going to get nicer from there on out. So, we've got great temperatures, and I'm sure Anthony would probably prefer evenings if this were to happen. So that seems to be the best time to experience something, whether you're listening for calls or seeing visuals. And Anthony, I might take you up on it. I've got a little bit of time off, and maybe we can meet up or something. I am not a researcher, but I am very curious, and I like to, to experience something, but I'm not sure how much I want to experience. Even though my experience was non-threatening, I still don't know how much more I want to see. But I trust that you'll make sure that everybody's safe and sound and all that good stuff.
Well, I will do what I can do.
There you go.
If it makes you feel comfortable to bring a sidearm, then by all means bring it. So, but I won't be carrying any.
Sounds good. Sounds like the start of a good relationship. Carry that firearm. Well, thanks again, Anthony. I appreciate your time, and we'll stay in touch. And everyone have a great night.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.
You got it. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.